Help me hit 7,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you. I'm Evan, 37, and until this year I believed I understood what commitment meant. My wife, Maribel, used to be the kind of woman who smiled with her whole face. Someone whose laughter softened every room. I married her because she felt like home. Until one evening, she looked at me with a flat sort of calm, like she'd rehearsed the moment for weeks, and said something that cracked the foundation beneath my feet. I want an open marriage. She said it like she was suggesting new curtains. I remember staring at her, not angry, not confused, just hollowed out. The woman who used to cling to my arm during movies, who used to drag me into the kitchen to dance barefoot at midnight, now wanted options. I asked her why, and she shrugged like the answer was obvious. People grow. I don't want to feel tied down. I want to explore. It doesn't have to affect us. But it did. Immediately. The next days were filled with silence that felt louder than arguments. She acted liberated, walking around the house with a brightness that didn't include me. She went out late, dressed sharper than usual, her phone always upside down on the table. Every detail made me wonder how long she'd been imagining a life where I wasn't enough. I didn't agree. I simply accepted that her mind had already left. There was a difference. I started noticing things I had ignored. How she no longer asked about my day. How she didn't laugh at my jokes. How she didn't reach for my hand in the car anymore. I realized she had quietly stepped out of the marriage long before asking permission. So I adjusted accordingly. One afternoon, while Maribel was at another self-discovery brunch, her best friend Lila stopped by to grab something she'd left behind during a previous visit. Lila was warm in a way Maribel hadn't been for months. Soft-spoken, observant, the kind of person who pays attention even when you think she isn't. She asked, "Are you okay? You look exhausted." I almost lied, but something about her sincerity untied my tongue. I told her the truth. Not the dramatic version, just the quiet details. How Maribel seemed distant. How she wanted space with boundaries. Which made no sense. How I felt like a guest in my own home. Lila looked hurt. More for me than herself. "She's making a mistake," she whispered, shaking her head. "You've always been good to her." Her sympathy wasn't romantic. It was human. But in that moment, feeling seen mattered more than anything. A week later, I met Rowan, Maribel's younger sister, at a small family dinner. She was 25, sharp-witted, perceptive, and with a sort of kindness that didn't require announcements. She had always liked me, but that evening she seemed unusually attentive. When Maribel got up to take a call, outside, of course, Rowan leaned close and said quietly, "Don't let her make you feel replaceable. She does that when she's restless." It hit harder than it should have. Someone in her own family acknowledging the cracks. That night, driving home alone, I realized something with chilling clarity. Everyone could see what was happening except Maribel. And I was done being the only one pretending. If she wanted an open marriage, then she wanted distance. She wanted freedom from responsibility, from loyalty, from partnership. Fine. I wasn't going to chase someone racing toward the exit. The freedom she claimed suddenly applied to me as well. And here's the thing she never understood. I didn't seek revenge. I didn't scheme. I didn't go looking for validation. But when two people, Lila and Rowan, treated me with more respect, empathy, and honesty in a few weeks than my wife had in a year, something shifted. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. It was emotional gravity. People drift toward where they feel valued. And I was no exception. Maribel continued floating in her new, unrestricted world, oblivious to the growing closeness between the three people she trusted most. The irony? She created the distance she later accused me of. One night, she came home smiling, wearing a perfume I didn't recognize, humming a song I hadn't heard before. She kissed my cheek like a formality, then scrolled through her phone for an hour, never noticing the way I studied her like a stranger. I realized I no longer feared losing her. I already had, and she had no idea what was quietly unraveling behind the scenes. Threads she had pulled loose herself. This was only the beginning. What happened next wasn't planned. It didn't follow a timeline, and I didn't script anything to hurt Maribel. Life simply aligned itself in a way she never imagined, because she never stopped to imagine anything beyond her own freedom. It started with Lila checking on me more often. A short message here and there, simple things like, "How are you holding up?" or, "I hope you ate today." They weren't flirtatious. They were thoughtful. After weeks of feeling invisible in my own home, the smallest kindness carried weight. One rainy afternoon she stopped by again, this time with soup she'd made. She laughed awkwardly as she handed it over. "You looked exhausted last week. Thought you might need something warm." It felt almost embarrassing to accept help from someone who wasn't my wife. But the truth is, I needed warmth, from anywhere it came. We ended up talking for hours, the kind of conversation that isn't fast or loud but steady and grounding. She listened without judging Maribel, which surprised me. She wasn't trying to turn me against her. She was simply witnessing what I had been living with alone. When she left, she squeezed my arm lightly and said, "You deserve someone who chooses you, not someone who compares options." Her words stayed with me long after she walked away. A few days later, Rowan asked to meet for coffee. She said she needed advice for a job interview. But halfway through the conversation, it was clear that wasn't the real reason she called. "I'm worried about her," Rowan admitted, stirring her drink absent-mindedly. "She's chasing something she doesn't understand, and she's dragging you through the mess." I never asked Rowan to take sides. She simply saw the truth and cared enough to speak it. By then, the emotional gap between Maribel and me felt irreversible. She was living one life and I was slowly rebuilding another. Not with intention, but through the simple kindness of people who saw me where she didn't. One evening, after another one of her late returns, she walked in glowing, hair tousled, lips flushed, a smile she hadn't worn for me in months. She dropped her purse on the table and asked casually, "Did you eat?" Like a roommate. Nothing more. Something inside me hardened. Not out of anger, but clarity. "You look happy," I said. She hesitated, then nodded. "I am. I feel free. I feel like myself again." I didn't respond. Freedom, I realized, had become her way of saying, "I'm not accountable to you anymore." The next morning, she asked if we could update our boundaries. That was the moment I stopped her mid-sentence. "Update them for what?" I asked calmly. "You've already made your changes. You just want me to catch up." She blinked, stunned by my tone. "You agreed to this," she said defensively. "I accepted the truth," I corrected her. "You didn't leave room for agreement." She didn't have an answer. That week, my connection with Lila and Rowan deepened. Not in a way that broke any moral lines, just honest, raw conversations with people who weren't pretending. They cared about the damage Maribel was causing because they saw how deeply she was spiraling away from reality. The turning point came unexpectedly. One Saturday morning, Maribel burst into the living room holding her phone like it was a weapon. "Why is Lila checking on you so much? And why is Rowan asking you to meet her alone?" Her voice was sharp, almost panicked. I didn't flinch. "Because they noticed things you didn't." She stared at me like I had betrayed her in some unspeakable way. The irony was enormous. She had dismantled our marriage piece by piece, then demanded loyalty from the ruins. "You're crossing lines," she snapped. "And you erased the lines," I replied quietly. She looked shaken. For the first time, she seemed to see the consequences of her choices, how the people she trusted most had stepped into the emotional vacancy she created. She pointed at me with trembling frustration. "Are you trying to hurt me?" "No," I said. "But I stopped trying to protect you from yourself." Those words landed harder than any argument we had ever had. She sank onto the couch like her knees gave out. For once, her bravado crumbled. "What's happening to us, Evan?" she whispered. I sat across from her, not beside her. "You opened the door. You walked out. And now you're shocked that I didn't chase you." She looked up with wide, disbelieving eyes, as if she had expected the world to bend around her decisions without consequence. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't angry. It was revealing. That was the exact moment she realized she wasn't the center of my orbit anymore. She didn't know the full story yet. How deeply Lila had become someone I trusted. How Rowan had become someone who understood me better than my own wife did. She had no idea how far the shift had gone. But she was about to find out. And what came next? She never saw coming.